First of all, I want to thank both gentlemen for being here. Of course, a big fan of the chairman and had the opportunity to work on legislation together with my good friend from Pennsylvania as well. So I know you both be very serious legislators. When we saw Mr. Smith's bill before, I was very supportive of it then. I remain very supportive of it now. I mean, the most complaints that I get in my district are about regulations, just the sheer volume, the speed with which they come out, the duplication. I think this is a much-needed weeding of the regulatory garden, if you will. So, and I'm particularly impressed, Mr. Chairman, when you lay out the fact that there's going to be a substantial minority presence on this board, that it's going to have to be confirmed by the United States Senate. We know from recent experience that's not an easy thing to do. That, to me, offers a great deal in the way of comfort and safeguard. Let me ask you this. When the recommendations are made, do they always come on block to us, or do we have the ability, and Mr. Cartwright, you can address this as well, to pull out if we decided, okay, we really think as good as this body is and as hard as they work, maybe they've made a mistake here. What would be the process whereby we could correct it if we saw something like that?
If I may, they do need to be taken in block, but Congress always reserves the right to adjust or introduce a bill that maybe included or didn't include. We may look at that and say, hey, they made 155 recommendations, but I'm making up numbers and hypothetical, 122 of them were bipartisan. Let's just tackle that, and I'm sure that we would introduce a bill and pass and tackle those. So we always reserve the right to be able to go back and do that. But this does provide an expedited way to look at them in block. And that's where I hope that the commission, in a good bipartisan way, will come together. And it'll be so obvious that their good work will come together, and there will be a significant workload of things that are done. And remember, Congress still has a stay. I heard that maybe we've taken away Congress's purview or Congress's right. It still has to come to Congress. It still has to pass the House. It still has to pass the Senate, and it still needs to be signed by the President in order to get rid of this underbrush, so to speak, and clear it out so that we have Oklahoma, Utah, Texas. We all understand how you get a good, healthy tree and good. You got to sometimes clear the underbrush every once in a while, make sure that things are working well. Think of it like that. And
you know, in Oklahoma, we don't have much underbrush to clear. You know, we're pretty excited just to see a tree, let alone 2 or 3 of them together. Let me ask you this, because I'm just curious about this. And again, Mr. Cartwright, if you want to address that point before I ask my next one, please do.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. What you worry about is throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, there are going to be some protections. Suppose you have a up or down vote on 200 regulations, and one of them is really important. Wouldn't it make better sense, and I'm not saying one at a time, I understand the frustration going through them one at a time, but wouldn't it make sense to maybe limit it to 10 at a time? Or some happy medium like that. That's why I've urged for an open rule on this, so that we can bring modifying ideas to this bill.
I'm just curious, Mr. Chairman, this is maybe even addressed to you, but I mean, is this something the Rules Committee could do if it chose to do, if it wanted to pull something out itself? I mean, we do have an extraordinary range of power in this committee in that regard.
Well, I think the jurisdiction, if the gentleman is engaging me, I think the jurisdiction would come straight to government reform. Probably it could come that there might be some laws of the country that judiciary might want to tackle, but that I think by and large it would come, and once it was given to us as a report, it would go to them at the authorizing committee. And but once again, I don't even know that you've even seen this report.
well, again, and part of what this legislation does is it allows them to review the 178,000 pages, only look at things 15 years old and older. They're going to have incentives to have their good work ultimately become law too, and the more bipartisan that it is, the more likely that that's going to happen. So I think all the incentives are in the right place, but again, there's no reason why we can't look at the good work that they come up with. And I don't know if it's thousands of regulations or hundreds of regulations, and the case may be made, hey, we can mutually agree on 90% of them. Again, I'm making up a number. Maybe it's only 50%, maybe it's 20%. But somebody will then inevitably introduce that bill, and then we can vote to pass that forward.
Yeah, I agree with my friend's analysis that I think there are sufficient safeguards here, and the problem is just so overwhelming, as you point out,
Yeah.
170,000 pages. I think pretty much makes the statement as to why you want to be able to move a lot of these after a commission has taken the time, and again, a bipartisan commission approved by both bodies. And so, again, I want to commend through you, my good friend, Mr. Smith, for his work, and thank you guys again both for being here. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Yields back his time. I don't